What is up, guys? Team Yugi Fields here, and today we're going to be going over my tier list for the September 2020 format. I'm going to be showcasing what I think is basically the positionings for these decks that I have on the screen here. I have a pretty good chunk of things that are up. I figure that all of this kind of covers most of the decks that you're probably going to see pop up the most frequently out of anything. You'll definitely see some other things pop up, but I think that these are probably the most likely to see in the entire meta if you go to locals, if you're playing online. So I figure I would showcase just exactly what you should expect and give you guys basically my opinion as to what the top decks and the other decks that kind of fall into the rogue category, and 1.5 and 2 for your tiers. So I figure I would do this and just show everyone so I can give everyone my opinion. This is not set in stone. It's not something that is guaranteed. I want to preface that this is all strictly opinion based. If you disagree with it, that's fine, but don't go off in the comments going, oh my god, this list is so wrong. It's all based off opinion. Your opinion is just as right as mine, 100%. So just keep that in mind, that both of our opinions are exactly right for this. It's just a matter of what we think is going to be the top tier decks and where everything else is going to fall as well. So we're going to go ahead and hop into this. We're going to start with Dinos. Dinos, I'm going to place in tier 1. I'm already seeing an excessive amount of people in the top tables of Dueling Book playing this deck. I mean, the deck didn't get hit, so I kind of expect it. It's nothing that, like, seems out of the ordinary. I mean, Ultimate Conductor Tyrant is just a ridiculous card, so, like, this deck is just nuts. It's honestly just going to be so crazy. Then, moving forwards, we're looking at Madolche now, and I'm going to put Madolche in the everything else section. A lot of people put this deck at tier 2. I think it's rogue at best. The deck loses to a Nibiru. Like, honestly, you could Nibiru the deck, and the deck basically loses. It's very hard for it to recover, so I don't think that this deck is that good, even though you see a bunch of people playing it randomly on Dueling Book. I think the deck is all hype and no bite. Moving on to Eldlich. This is also going to go in tier 1. I'm going to put it below Dinos. Because I think that Dinos are better than this deck, significantly so. So I think that Eldlich still is very, very strong with the amount of variations you can play it in, which is nice. The splashability of the engine makes the deck really, really solid overall, but I think that Dinos still have the edge on it overall. Moving on to Guru, I'm going to put, or Subterra, Guru, whatever you want to consider it. It's Subterra, but it's basically Guru control. I'm going to put that in tier 2. I think that this deck is going to be played somewhat, but I don't think that it's going to have an excessive place in the meta. I don't think that it's going to be something that you're going to see pop up like very frequently. You'll run into a couple matches against it, but honestly, most people who are playing this deck have been playing it forever and know the ins and outs of it. You're not seeing a lot of new players play this deck for obvious reasons. But moving on to Infernoble Knights, this deck definitely can go tier 1. I'm also going to put it above Infernoble, but I'm going to put it below Dino. Honestly, I thought that this was probably the second best deck looking at it, but honestly, I'd put it the third best deck, and I think Dino is probably the second best. And Eldlich variants are probably the fourth best deck. At first I thought Eldlich might have been first, and then I kind of changed my opinion on it, and I honestly, we'll get to what I think is the best, obviously, over time, but I think that these three are 3 of the top 5 decks for sure. Moving on, though, to Fluffals. This is going to fall under the everything else category. I'm actually going to put it above Madolche. This deck can really, really pop off, and it can OTK, or you can set up VFDs, and you can set up other cards too. This deck is crazy. Honestly, I love playing this deck. It's very, very fun. But I wouldn't say that it's going to be popping up and topping a bunch of online tournaments or in-life tournaments for that part. So I think that it's definitely a fun deck, but it's nothing to really freak out about. Next, DDDs. I'm actually, ironically enough, I'm going to put this in the tier 2 category rather than everything else. I think it's better than everything else. The reason that I really think this deck functions is that even with the ban list to the hits to the Synchro engine, it did not hurt the deck, because the cards that were hit, being Jet Synchron and Olion, you don't even have to play in this deck to do a full combo. it's really, really crazy. And DD Lamia is a Dragoon by itself, or I'm sorry, Dark Contract is basically a Dragoon by itself. So being able to have cards like that in your deck that basically, if you brick, give you still a negation and a monster that can't be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects, that's crazy. So I think that DDD has a lot of potential as a build-a-board going first deck. So we'll see how that goes. Next, we have Adamancipator. Unfortunately, with the banning of Block Dragon, I'm going to have to put this into the tier 2 category. I don't think that this deck is going to be that good. As much as it sucks, when Block Dragon goes, we're going to struggle to play the deck, and it's just not going to function the way that it's supposed to. So I honestly think that this deck is really taking a hard hit. I think that it's still going to pop up semi-frequently, but so far from what I'm seeing, there's not really anyone playing the deck right now. So this doesn't shock me at all. If it would be at a tier 2 category, you'll still see it, but it won't be that good. Then we have Pendulum, everyone's favorite. It's always Pendulum. This deck probably can go into tier 2, even with Double Iris. You know, I'm gonna put it above DDD because I think that it's probably gonna see more play, but I don't think that it's excessively better than DDD. They both kind of do the same thing as a deck. They both just build a board, and considering DDD consists of a lot of pendulums, it's their style is just similar. Style's really similar, so I'll keep these both fairly equal with each other. Moving on to ABCs, though, I'm going to say that ABCs are probably another tier 2 deck, and honestly, I'm going to put it right below DDD. I think that these three are probably tied with each other, to be perfectly honest with you. I just think that they play extremely well for what they are, and I think that you're going to see them semi-frequently pop up, but it's not going to be like the most popular decks in the format for the lower tiers anyways. Moving on to Thunder Dragon, this deck is kind of tricky. Honestly, this is probably the most difficult deck on the list for me to place in a category. I kind of want to place it in everything else, but I want to place it at the top of everything else. So like it's at the top of everything else and probably the end of tier 2. I wouldn't say that it's more so one or the other. It's either the very top of everything else or the end of tier 2. The deck's good, but I don't know. I really don't think it's going to do anything exceptionally well this format. Moving on to my favorite deck, Burning Abyss. I honestly, I've seen so many people playing this deck already on Dueling Book, and it's functioning fairly well. It's competing with all the meta decks now that are, you know, the more popularized ones in recent months. So I'm honestly going to put BA at tier 1.5. I don't think that it's going to be better than, you know, any of the top tier decks overall, but I think that it's going to be able to compete, and we'll probably see this deck top in online tournaments semi-frequently. So be on the lookout for my favorite deck. It's going to happen. Moving on to the Invoked engine, I'm also going to put this at 1.5, and I'm going to put it above Burning Abyss. I think this deck has a lot of potential. Honestly, I think that this deck is super, super crazy every single format. The fact that they didn't hit Magical Meltdown confuses me. Whenever I see a ban list and they don't do at least something to this deck, I'm always confused. Because the deck's really, really good, I think. It does so many different things. And I feel that the overall purpose of the deck, being able to fusion summon and just continually search and recycle the same fusion material over and over and over again, makes the deck amazing, absolutely amazing. So definitely consider playing Invoked if you kind of want an off-meta deck, or if you want to toss the Invoked in with a lot of the engines that are honestly on this list. You can, and it functions equally as well. Moving on to Orcist, this deck can go. I'm gonna put this in 1. Yeah, we'll put it in 1.5. I think 1.5 is probably an accurate representation. I'm going to put it below BA and Invoke, though. I think that it's a good deck, but I don't think it's going to be doing anything crazy. Maybe we'll see it top 1 or 2 tournaments here or there, but I think there are a lot of other decks that do the same thing that it does, but better. There's so many other decks that are better than this deck. It's been power crept for sure, so it's good, but it's not the best. Moving on to Rockets. This honestly is my #1 pick for the format. I think that Rockets are probably the best deck to be playing this format. It's absolutely insane the amount of stuff this deck can do. So keep that in mind, that the way that this deck functions is off the chain. Absolutely off the chain. I really, really enjoy playing it. And it's super, super fun, super strong, and I'll have a deck profile for you guys pretty soon. I'm just waiting on some stuff to show up. And we're going to go to Unchained next. I'm going to put this in... I'm stuck between everything else in Tier 2. I think I'm going to put this in Tier 2, and I'm going to put it above ABC and DDD. But I'm going to put it in between Pendulum Magicians and DDD. This deck is super, super crazy when it pops off. I have never seen a deck that can go second as well as this deck, in my opinion. Invoked definitely can go second very, very well, but I think that this deck does what Invoked does as far as breaking boards going second, but better. This deck is absolutely nuts, being able to pop so many cards on the field and just gain more resources off popping cards. Craziest thing I've ever seen. I really, really enjoy this deck. It's definitely worth it. Then next we have Altergeist. I am just going to do the same thing that I did with Guru. We're going to toss it in Tier 2 here. It's another backrow deck. There's not much to say. You're going to see this top, but it's not the best deck. It basically is the same thing as Guru with just kind of a slightly different playstyle that uses the extra deck a little bit more. Not much to really go over there. Mermail's here. I'm actually going to put this above the Thunder Dragon deck. I think it's basically end of Tier 2, beginning of Rogue or everything else. Really, really cool deck. It functions, but the ban listed kind of hurt with the Olion and Jet Synchron ban. Those were kind of some important pieces to this, but it's still not bad. Moving on to Salad, one of my all-time favorites. I'm going to toss this over here in Tier 2. We're going to put it behind the Adamancipator, but above Guru and Geist. I think that this deck just randomly pops up and it always manages to sneak into the top cut somewhere. Always. It doesn't matter what you're doing with it. So it's pretty cool. I think that this deck is fully worth playing. If you're trying to play on a budget too, it's pretty cheap. The only part that adds up is the hand traps and the access code talker, so keep that in mind. But other than that, deck is dirt cheap. That's really, really good. Next, we'll go on to Sky Striker. Striker is also very, very important in this meta. It's important every meta, seeing we got Widow Anchor to 3 now. So the real question is, where do we put Striker? And for me, I am going to put it in the very top of Tier 2. And the very bottom of Tier 1.5. This deck, with the amount of hand traps that it can play and having access to 3 Widow Anchor, is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I'm thoroughly impressed with how well this deck operates. I don't know, like, why Widow Anchor should be at 3. I think it should be at 1 personally. But I'm not going to complain. I love playing Sky Striker, so I can't complain. I'm just saying that in general, the card is so good. I'm kind of shocked that it went to anything above 1, even with Engage being banned. I think that, the fact that you could just steal your opponent's cards is pretty ridiculous and negate their effects. Mind Control's banned, but we have Widow Anchor, so... I'm sorry, Mind Control's at 1, but we have Widow Anchor, so, it's pretty crazy. Moving on to the last deck here on the list, this is Zoodiac. Zoodiac is an interesting one because I posted a Zoodiac Dogmatika deck profile, and that's one thing that for whatever reason the picture wouldn't load onto this tier maker, the Dogmatika picture that I had. So Dogmatika, I'm gonna say, also goes in Tier 1. It's either in front of or behind Eldlich. I'm not sure which one, but just so you guys know, for whatever reason the picture wouldn't load. So Dogmatika is either in front of or behind Eldlich. The deck is just really, really good. The ability to search as much as it does and pop cards that interact with your opponent's board is crazy. But moving on to Zoodiacs now. If you mix this deck with Dogmatika, it's really good. You could also mix it with Eldlich, and it's really good. As a Soul Engine, if you're playing it as pure, I would say that it's probably like somewhere within the Tier 2 category. Probably we'll put it a little bit above Salad. and Guru and Geist, but it's nothing like super crazy or over the top. It does, you know, put out a Mega Fleet, which Mega Fleet is just crazy. Or sorry, Mega Clops. I always say Mega Fleet, but it's Mega Clops. Mega Clops by itself is just a crazy card. So I think Zoodiac is a deck that has potential, but it's not going to be like an excessively seen deck. Maybe if like people do decide to toss the Dogmatika engine in there, or the Eldlich engine, or something else, if someone has something else they want to toss in there. But I think that the deck overall is pretty decent, just nothing to really freak out about. But this is basically how I'm looking at things. We're going to see a lot of tier 2 decks pop up in this format. I think I don't want to say it's a fairly open format, but we do have 5 decks at the top of, you know, the totem pole that are functioning extremely well. And having 5 decks is pretty good. It's better than, personally, I like 5 deck formats. A lot of people say they like Trinity formats, where there's just 3 decks. But like, I don't like those. I don't enjoy it. It seems a little too boring to me, because the level of mirror matches you're going to play is insane. Whereas like something with a 5 deck format is just a little more open, but it's not excessively broad. The tier 2 decks, a lot of these you're not going to see frequently. You won't see Striker frequently. You're not going to see Unchained frequently. You won't see DDD frequently. ABC you probably won't see frequently. Same with Zoo, Subterror, and Altergeist. But you'll probably see some Salad, some Adamancipator, and some Pendulum pop up more frequently than the other decks on here. Everything else, you're not going to see a lot of these decks pop up a lot. Like you almost have to like try and find them in order to play them. Tier 1.5 though, I think the Invoked, the Burning Abyss, and the Orcist are probably pretty accurate. If you don't like want to get one of the best decks being in the top 5 here, including the Dogmatika one, which I couldn't get the picture to load on here for whatever reason. I don't know why. You know, I think that going for any of these tier 1.5 decks is a pretty good call if you don't want to pick up one of the top decks. And I think for the most part, like these tier 1.5 decks, they're a little bit cheaper. But then again, Rocket just got basically reprinted so hard. Like it got reprinted into the ground for all the expensive cards. So this deck is actually pretty cheap right now for the most part. So I mean, if you're gonna pick up any of the tier 1 decks, you might as well pick up the best one, seeing it's probably the cheapest. Either this or Dino. They're both the first and second best deck, and they're probably the cheapest out of the top tier decks, you know, because Infernoble is kind of expensive. Eldlich is pretty expensive. I mean, once you get the Golden Lords, it can be cheaper, but if you're playing the X deck variation, it's still expensive. And Dogmatika is like ridiculously expensive if you're a budget player. So I wouldn't advise it at that point. But overall, I think that this is a pretty accurate representation of what we're going to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think. If there's any decks that you guys really enjoy that you want to see pop up in the meta more frequently, and you know, just exactly where you want to see all these decks go, and how you're feeling on the start of the current state of the meta. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave it in the comment sections down below. And for right now, this is Team Yugi Fails signing out.